Hi everyone, I hope you enjoyed the previous keynote. So it feels like it's just going to get better and better because the next keynote speaker is pivotal in the Nordic and also in Europe when it comes to sustainable investments. He previously lived and worked in Sweden, where he received a medal from the Swedish king for outstanding contributions within Swedish environmental and sustainability development within the financial sector. I think everyone who's interested in sustainable finance knows who this is. But he was also chosen as a young global leader at the World Economic Forum in Davos in 2011. And he's an author of the book Guld och gröna skogar. He's a leading financial expert on sustainable investments, and I'm really pleased to welcome Sascha Beslik.
Thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Sascha Beslik. I'm heading Sustainable Finance Development for J. Safra Sarasin Sustainable Asset Management in Switzerland. I'm based in Zurich. And I've been doing sustainable investments for approximately 20 years. My experience is wide and deep in this area. However, some days, as everybody else, I wake up and think about what is actually really motivating me to do what I do. I'm trying to sort of find emotional strings attached to what I do. Because on the end of the story, it's all about how motivated and emotional we are about things. So before I go in and tell you about sustainable finance and investments and what's the status of that in the world, I would like you to get a sort of an emotional feeling about it. What is actually the thing that we are fighting for? What are the things that make us do what we need to do to make choices that we make every day? Have a look at this film. Yes, I would like you to stay in that emotional sort of a mode. The film that we just saw is some of the elements of what many of us are actually fighting for. And I think most of us can agree to the fact that it's worth fighting for because it gives us so much back. Usually we are rationalizing some of our emotions, but staying emotional on some of these things is actually very important, even if you work in a sustainable investments and a finance business. And why is that so important? Because we are overloaded with facts, and some of these facts are so emotional, they are difficult to channelize inside and rationalize in so many different ways. We need a change, and we need a significant software update system change, and that change needs to take place now, and we have a choice. So you may ask yourself a question, why do we need that change? So I'll give you a couple of examples. January 2020 was the warmest month in Europe in the history of Europe. May 2020 was the warmest month in the world ever recorded before. The temperature in Siberia in June was 38 degrees. Today on my way here to the studio, I read the news that France has recorded its historically highest temperature ever. These are some of the facts that we know. They're very emotional, but they're also asking us questions. What are the rational changes? What are the things that we need to do? And what are the responsibilities to industries? And industries, as financial sector, are one of the few industries that is truly global. Financial industry depends on globalization, and it feeds globalization in so many different ways. It has progressed over the number of years and has created enormous wealth in some parts of the world. However, it's still one of the elements and toolboxes that is used currently today in a way that many people will deem it as not sustainable. The core reason for that is that the industry as a toolbox can be used in so many different ways. We can build tanks and ammunition and guns, and we can build hospitals, and we can build renewable energy, and we can build other things. So what is the thing that makes us not do sustainable finance across the world as it should be done today? One of the things that is really important to think of is the role of the financial sector in transition to a sustainable future. Currently, we have approximately 161 companies in the world that emit about 80% of all industrial emissions. Bear in mind this, 161 companies that have been approached by financial industry, including ourselves, to tackle one of the biggest shifts we need in the history of humankind. That is to be less dependent on, or basically phase out the fossil fuels out of the energy mix that we need in order to sustain our life on this planet, but also to provide the success to the next coming generations. Why is it so difficult when we know that it's 161 companies? Because these companies are part of the system that we have built over the last 200 years that sustain economies that we live in. So the role of financial industry going forward in many ways will be to transform itself from industry that invests for the past into an industry that invests for the future. One of the things that we've been doing for the last couple of months, and actually half a year, is to look at the ways how we as the organization and the asset managers that invest in global companies around the world, and also European companies, how can we contribute with our investments and with our services, because that's the job that I have together with my colleagues. One of the things that we realized is that if we are really going to provide next generations and the current generations a prosperous wealth going forward, including the good life and good environment and good social conditions, we need to change the way how we look at the companies that we invest in. One of the things that we came up with, which took us some time, is to make a very clear public pledge about neutralizing all our emissions related to climate in all our investments by 2035. It's a very ambitious thing, but it's also something that we as investors believe will bring us better returns. It will give us better insights in the way how we invest in the companies and create much better understanding for our customers and clients about how we can create returns going forward and also how we can manage some of these things. What is it? We're still on air? Yes, good. Then we can continue. So, one of the things you can ask yourself, why is it so complex to address the issues like 161 companies? I mentioned that from a perspective of being systemic and integrated in the economies that we live in. what is happening right now in this space is that you will see a huge amount of money being shifted from what is traditionally called mainstream investments into what is nowadays called sustainable finance and sustainable investments. The shift is taking place right now. The amount of money that is invested today compared to a couple of years ago is huge. One of the things that I can sort of mention, which is a very interesting sort of a perspective, is within a couple of years, you will probably have most of the capital around the world having some kind of a claim, especially in the European Union, on being sustainable or needing to be sustainable in terms of providing customers and clients with investments that contribute to better environment, better working conditions, better governance issues within the company, but in the same time, also investments that contribute to better returns. There is a clear evidence that investments that are sustainable are actually performing much better in the long term, especially now during the COVID-19. You could clearly see the link between companies that are well managed and that are responsible in terms of how and what kind of returns they provide to the investors. But this is not the only reason. The second reason is that we know that we have a choice. We have a choice to invest in a sustainable way. We as asset managers have a choice to create investment products that are sustainable. And one of the things that we've done, and one of the things that I'm very proud of, is to develop investment products where we invest in disruptive technologies. And we have started one of these products a couple of years ago, attracting investments into technical solutions, everything from fintech to connectivity to new tech disruptors, investing in solutions that we believe to some extent in that space will contribute to the shift and transformation that we need going forward. These investments are, a couple of years ago, not easy. They were not easy to be done. Today, we have a completely different way of looking at it, and also a pool of companies around the world that we can actually go in and see what exactly are the outcomes that we're looking for. So far, investments on the sustainability side have all been about the processes. We invest in sustainable companies. The future is about investing in sustainable outcomes. How do we shift our investments to something that is measurable, tangible for people who are actually buying them? If you buy ecological or organic products, you buy electrical cars, you know exactly what outcome you can actually expect. If you go to sustainable investment space, usually you get the information and description about what processes, what tools, and also what mechanisms are used to make sure that sustainable investments are sustainable. However, the core of this does not tell you anything about what are the outcomes that these investments create. Do they create better environment? Do they create less CO2 emissions? Do they take care about issues related to better working conditions? Are board structures much better? And what are the outcomes that investors actually want to create? These are the things that will shift the capital globally right now. In the next 5 to 10 years, most of the sustainable investments around the world will be all about outcomes and results they can actually create. This is where sectors like fintech and many other tech sectors will have a significant role to play, not only for the investments, but also for many societies they actually operate in now. The world is interconnected. Financial industry is one of the global citizens with the global responsibility. In the same way, it's pretty much dependent on the new tech innovations in many different sectors, including of course, the fintech sector. One of the challenges that we are facing, and this is a fair sort of a space to share it in, is when we make investment decisions, we are looking at the information provided by companies across the world, being it in Africa or India or China and many other places. That information is provided to us, but most of that information is actually not validated and assured. Of course, our starting point is not the fact that companies are not providing us with the right information, but the starting point for us is to see which of these companies are best placed to capture the scale and the speed of change we are seeing in front of us. So, from our angle, the marriage between the finance, fintech, and other solutions will pretty much going forward be about finding the combinations and finding the connections where we can actually use much more of the interdependencies we have to create transformation into a sustainable future where financial industry can play a significant role in feeding investments and feeding the capital flows into the fintech but also other sectors, to speed up the scale that we need on a global level to tackle some of these big challenges. Why is this so complex right now? Well, financial industry is inherently very short-sighted. Most of the things that we do, which in a normal people's life would be a long term, it's very sort of a short term in our industry. Some of the fiduciary duties, especially on the asset owner side, are changing. And as such, you will see also the changes in how asset owners, actually you and me, and most of the people that have their pension money, and most of the people that actually live in the countries, that pay taxes and they get the benefits of it, we are the owners of a capital, and we are the stewards, basically, of how that capital is invested. Of course, we are using the middle hand, which is pension funds, authorities, and others, but in the end of the story, it's us. It is about us. It's us making the decisions. It's us about making the choices. And we need to make these choices because, as I mentioned earlier, and as you saw it in a film, because we have a choice. It's emotional. It is about us. It's about our survival. It's about all the good things we want to fight for. But it's about now. We don't have a time. And what I mean by that, if you look at the speed of change that is taking place currently, and you're hearing this for somebody that works in the financial industry, I can see the consequences of it. Being that California, being that Europe, being that other parts of the world, the way how systemic changes will hit different industries, sectors, and countries going forward, it's not happening in the next months, but residual impact of this will be visible for generations to come. That's why I think it's very important to sort of stress that importance. We need it now. We need change now. We need to shift the capital flows as today, tomorrow, and for the next 100 years. We need to shift them towards a sustainable future in much better speed than we are doing it today. From our own perspective, being a sustainable asset manager means that we have to say no to many things as well. We have to look at ourselves every day and ask ourselves, is this something that I would like to invest my children's money in, my friends' money? Is this something that I can see myself in a mirror every day when I go to work and say, okay, this investments I do, I will get these kind of returns, and this is a sustainable outcome that I would like to achieve. This is where we're going. We are not there today, but we will move into that space going forward. I think the question was, is sustainable finance reshaping sort of the interplay between sustainability and fintech and other tech sectors? Yes, it does. Does it sort of reshape the way how we look at the finance? We are currently in that process today. I think my personal opinion is that we need to have a much more speed. We need to be honest about what is possible. We also need to be very much prepared on the consequences and risks related to our pension money, our returns going forward, if we are not making these decisions. So I would like to sort of finalize this speech with the thanks to the organizers and also thanks to you on the other side watching. I think sometimes we rationalize things too much. Sometimes our emotions may be more worth in terms of getting people motivated. Ask yourself every day when you do things that you do that because they are rationally right or emotionally good? And I think some of the discussions we have about the climate change need to be emotional, and we need to see it for what it is. Over the last 20 years, I've seen most of the world 3 times over. I've been to mines in Congo, I've been to the working floors of Asia, North America, South America, Australia, many other places, different industries, different sectors. And every time I visited companies to evaluate the way how they manage sustainability, I never met people who really didn't want to take that responsibility. Then you ask yourself, so why is it so difficult? And people will look it back and say, but it's a part of the system. Well, we are the system. So let's try to change that system, and that change, I guess, starts with all of us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sasha. Do you have time for a question, you think?
Yes.
So I have a question from the audience. With the increased capital flow towards sustainability and disruptive technology, being an impact startup could almost seem like a shortcut to capital. in the near term future. Do you currently see something you consider truly sustainable and innovative coming from impact startups, or are startups capitalizing on the hype?
I think the honest answer to that question is there is both. So there is a lot of hype, but also there are startups that are having a scalable potential to be really interesting. Most of the startups that I've looked at from sort of an impact space with a scale potential are not in Europe. They are mostly, I would say, in Africa and Asia. In many cases well capitalized because the capital in Asia is liquid in terms of it's available. So it's a sort of a 50-50 answer. Look, there is a lot of inflation in impact right now. A lot of inflation in sustainable. Everybody's sustainable. Everything is sustainable. I think there is a risk in that because it will boomerang back in a way that it will hurt the entire industry if it's not dealt with properly. I mean, in terms of how it's done.
Yeah.
So we need to be careful how to use it.
Thank you so much. And for everyone who isn't checking out Sasha on LinkedIn, I see there's so much interesting stuff you post. So if you want to know more, I think you should follow. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thanks.